Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you. Yes. Hopefully you remind me to remind everyone. If we're really lucky, I'll remember. Actually, I'm going to do it now because I'll forget once we get started. We will be doing our collection on the second Sunday, so this Sunday. The loose plate offering will go to the funding of the lunch accounts. So remember, when the plate comes around, any loose plate or checks that are designated to that will go to that fund. So we'll be doing a collection on our second Sundays is when we'll be doing those collections for outreach. Or you can throw money at her. However it gets there, we're gonna pay off kids' lunch accounts. And as you know, I feel really strongly about that because I work with hunger kids all the time. So you can't teach a hunger kid. So there you go. Lent. Let's talk about the first Sunday in Lent. The pedantic clergy people will pedantically. Have you ever noticed that I love the term pedantic. Have you ever noticed that clergy are really pedantic? We are. We're the worst. We find these silly things to obsess about and this actually does play into my sermon. We obsess about things that don't matter as a distraction to things that matter. So just this week, well, remember to say that it's the first Sunday in Lent, not of Lent. I don't care what you call it, okay? Call it whatever you want. It's Lent. So I honestly don't care. But let's talk about that because the gospel and frankly all of our readings are really focused on the things that we choose to ignore. And I'm going to go through the temptations of Jesus because I think they matter. Because we like to think that it's all about the physical. Have you ever noticed that? All of the sins that we get worked up about are the ones that don't really matter. Yeah, we like to worry about what people eat, who people have sex with, what you wear, or like tattoos and things, stupid stuff. These are the things that we like to pin a lot of attention on. And the reason we do that is because they allow us to be distracted from the real important sins that you and I really struggle with. So we're going to go through the sins of Jesus and kind of what happens in this story. So let's put it in perspective. Jesus finally gets baptized, right? And we have this beautiful baptism story. In fact, I feel like maybe I preached about it a few weeks ago, if anyone was paying attention. Yeah. I did, if you were here. And we have this beautiful image of Jesus finally giving himself over to God and committing to ministry. And this beautiful dove comes down, and God says, "This is my son, my beloved, with you I am well pleased." And we stop the story there because it's a sweet story. It's beautiful. And I talk to you about how important it is that you feel like God loves and calls you and accepts you, right? But then here's the rest of the story, because this is important. In the translation, we kind of soften it a little bit, okay? So we talk about the dove lands lightly on his head, descends, it's beautiful, beautiful image. No, really the translation is more like Jesus gets attacked, okay? So really think more of a raptor with claws out as opposed to sweet little bird, okay? So the Holy Spirit comes in and it's like, bam, and it grabs Jesus, and it takes Jesus out into the desert, and it's like, good luck. Because the reality is, you and I really, to do ministry and to be decent humans, really have to come to grips with our own stuff. So for Jesus to really take on his call as the Messiah, Jesus must come to grips with Jesus' stuff, okay? And again, I go back to that, like we obsess about the little things so that we don't have to deal with our real stuff. Anyone else do that? Yeah, we're all guilty of it. We worry about the little things because then we don't have to deal with our real stuff. But Jesus must come to grips with Jesus' stuff in order to be the Messiah. And so Jesus is going to spend 40 days out coming to grips with his stuff. Let's talk about what his stuff is, because to be honest, his stuff is our stuff, and that's the power of this gospel. I'm going to sit down because I tired Mastiff today. That's what we talk about my dog, because she's like part Mastiff when we talk about her being, she tired Mastiff. Okay, I tired Mastiff today. 3 things that Jesus deals with, and they do go in ascending order. That matters. There are 3 things, and they are ascending in importance and difficulty, okay? You know how, like, when you're teaching kids things, you teach them the easy stuff first, and then you kind of, like, make it harder, and then they don't know. It's like boiling the frog. This is Jesus being boiled as a frog. Okay. Ooh, that's an image, isn't it? That's a horrible one. I really can't stand it, but, you know, there it is. Okay, so the first one is because Jesus is hungry, right? And so the first temptation is hunger. So if you're really that awesome and powerful, eat. You don't have to go hungry. Eat. And Jesus is like, no, because part of the power of what I'm doing is, and I'll explain fasting to you in a second if that's something that you really want to understand a little bit more. Anybody want to know about fasting? I mean, I can talk to you about fasting. Okay, we'll get to it. Y'all are like, no, not really. Okay, and Jesus is like, no, because to really dive into the spirituality of all of this, I really need to experience hunger. Okay, so that's solid. Jesus deals with his physical desires, okay? And that's really important because we have some big physical desires, don't we? We have to know our struggles with our own physical desires. All right. Just got that. Check. Next one. I'm going to take you to the pinnacle of the temple, and I'm going to throw yourself down and see what happens. The reason that matters in the image is because the temple is the center of the community. Everyone is going to see this. Everyone is going to notice. This is our temptation for fame, attention, popularity. And I know there's going to be an introvert in this room. It's like, yeah, I don't like people. I don't want to be popular. Don't be ridiculous. We all have the attention-seeking drive, right? We all want to be noticed. We all want to be loved for something. And loved not in like a true love, but like loved as in admired. We want to be admired for things. And so Jesus has to come to grips with his desire to be noticed and admired. And that's going to be a big one because Jesus is popular, okay? Jesus is charismatic. Jesus gets a lot of attention. And Jesus, to really, truly do ministry, oh God, and this is so important for clergy. I mean, it's important for all of us. If you are in a position where teachers are this way, where popularity gets you something, right? Popularity matters. And so Jesus, to really understand and do the work that Jesus is called to do, Jesus must come to grips with his need to be loved and admired. That's a tough one. That's a really, really tough one. And that one's going to take him some time to deal with, okay? So that's our second one. The third one is the biggest one. The third one is the temptation for power. So the temptation just looks around at all the kingdoms, all of the power. You know, you're thinking of the image from The Lion King, all of the things the light touches. Yeah. And Lion King? Okay, does that date me that I know the Lion King? It's okay. I've been forgiven for not knowing. Like the first one, the cartoon one, the original, the OG Lion King. Okay, everything a light touches. This could be yours. You could have power and control and dominion over everything that you see. That is our greatest drive. You and I, our greatest temptation is power. We love power, control, all those things. Those are our greatest and largest temptations. And that's going to be the hardest one for Jesus to really come to grips with. And it takes time for you and I to come to grips with the things that tempt us. It was never about any of the little things. It was never about what people wear. It was never about the silly things that you and I like to focus on, right? It was always about the big stuff that we try to ignore. We try to call it something different, right? Instead of power, we call it leadership. It was about power. Instead of admiration, we call it things like, well, I just want to be appreciated and cared about and loved. Was it? Or was it about being noticed? So all of these things matter, and we must come to grips with them to really, truly get it. So I get that we like to be like, well, Lynn's all dirty. I'm not going to church for Lynn. It's depressing. Y'all, our humanity is depressing. That's the depressing thing. Knowing ourselves is tough. Nobody wants self-awareness. That's why we get distracted by all the other things. Because if we really, truly dealt with our stuff, oh dear, sweet baby Jesus, what would we find? If you and I truly looked in the mirror instead of worrying about everybody else, what would we find? And we are terrified of what we will find. Terrified. And so Lent is really about giving yourself that space to get to know yourself and your stuff. Because it is not until we know ourselves and our stuff that we can do the work that God calls us to do. Because we will constantly be tripping over our stuff and calling it something different. And it will get us in trouble. The re-traumatization that we do of other people, the addictions that we face, all of these things, the manipulation of others, stealing money and calling it something different, all of these things are really us getting tripped on our stuff and calling it something different, justifying it. We do all sorts of ugly things, you and I. We hurt the people closest to us. We take advantage of the people nearest to us. You and I get addicted to things. And we do it because we're tripping on our stuff. And then we judge the people that we hurt, don't we? We're like, well, they were just so weak. Or, they really should have been giving all their money to this cause. It's their own stupid fault. Well, they need to stop falling in love with those people. It's their fault. When really it was our stuff the whole time. And we cannot do the work that God calls us to do when we're tripping on our stuff. So I invite you to think about your stuff. Think about your stuff. The power of going through fasting and things like that, I'll explain fasting a little bit, and I'm like a super skinny person. So fasting is not about losing the weight that you didn't lose at New Year's, okay? This is not about getting yourself in shape for swimsuit season, because that's right. I want to look my best when I die, just in case there's an open casket. Okay. So let's talk about it, because I think sometimes Lent becomes what we didn't manage to get done for New Year's. So we're going to do this self-care thing. Lent is not about self-care. And self-care, frankly, is no longer about self-care. Self-care is now you should buy this thing to feel better. And I'm like, that's not really self-care. Anyway, we'll do a rant about what I think about self-care some other time. Because right now we're going to talk about fasting and some of these spiritual disciplines that you can take on for Lent that can be really, really helpful. Okay, fasting is not about losing weight. Fasting is about getting to a place of clarity. And I'll use this as an example because it's flu season. Anyone here had the stomach flu recently? I mean, not me. I literally spent all my time staring at these kids being like, if you sniffle, go wash your hands, because I don't want it. Anyone had the stomach flu? You've had it at some point, right? The beloved virus of all viruses. Okay. I want you to not remember the feeling of vomiting and God-like things coming out of every orifice. I want you to remember the feeling that you had when you came out of it. Do you remember that feeling of complete clarity? Do you remember it? Because the first day after you have the stomach flu, you feel amazing. There's a clarity in that moment. That is what fasting is about doing. In fasting, you have purged all of that stuff that you and I shouldn't be consuming, but we do, like the carbs and the sugar and all the junk that gives you that brain fog. You know what brain fog is, right? Okay, so when you come into a fast and all of that stuff is ripped away, there is a mental clarity in that. And in that mental clarity, you will find things that you can't other times because that brain fog is there so much that you don't see it and you don't feel it, okay? That is the power of fasting, is getting into that place of clarity, mental clarity, which gives you spiritual clarity, or can. So that is fasting. Meditation does kind of the same thing, but in more of a mental state only. In meditation, it takes time to work up to getting to this place. It's why Buddhist monks spend like years getting to the place of being able to really, truly meditate. And now we talk about yoga, and I like all these like, oh, it's just such a feel-good thing. No, religion actually invented those things because we knew the power of fasting and meditation and all this stuff long before self-care found it. But it's fine, you can now do it at the Y. World's biggest eye roll, but whatever. Okay, so meditation is the mental version of fasting. Okay, so in that space, you give yourself space to be completely absent of any thought. Ooh, good luck with that one. Okay, it takes years of practice. Someday I'll just practice on you all by, where in all the prayers it says silence may be observed, and we don't. Because y'all can't handle it. I can't handle it. We got to fill that space, right? Because it's uncomfortable. Meditation is that space that feels super uncomfortable. To practice doing that, it does take practice to do that. So you really just kind of give yourself space. You can set a timer to do this if you're practicing. I wouldn't go any longer than 5 minutes the first time you're practicing meditation, because 5 minutes is going to drive you up the wall, okay? And if you get to 30 minutes, you're a guru. All right? So in that space, all these other thoughts are going to sneak in. They're going to. You're going to think about all the things that you forgot to do, or the argument that you had and what you should have said from like 20 years ago. Don't act like you're not going to do it. You're going to think, how deep can penguins dive? All of these thoughts are going to come in when you're meditating. The trick is to say, noted, let it go. Noted, let it go. Noted, let it go. And that is the practice of meditation. The power of meditation is in that space, God can enter in. In our silence, and in that clarity, other things can come in. Things that you and I have been chasing away for our entire lives. I'm not telling you what discipline to take on for Lent. I can't do that. Only you can figure that out. But I will say do something. Do something. I don't care if it's giving up chocolate. Oh, God, it's the season of Cadbury eggs. Like, I can't even. Don't do that. That's stupid. I had a teacher ask me, are you going to give up coffee for Lent? And I was like, I did that in college. Eric and I were dating, and he made me swear to never do it again. Because I'm not nice. And I'm not asking you to do something that's going to make you not nice or unlivable for the rest of us. But I would ask you to take on something. I had a person who read all of the Psalms during Lent, like every single one. Like even the bashing the dead babies on their heads with a rock, like the nasty ones. Because it's coming into that realization and that clarity and that purity of what it is. Who am I? And when we do that, we're ready for the cross at Easter. If you fast and lose 15 pounds, don't tell your doctor about it.
We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays.
Don't say that.
Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.